Hi, and welcome to Manned Up Conversations, where we connect with evolving men to discuss issues around masculinity and manhood, and also provide tools to help us be better for our society.
Because I'm sort of talking about it from a multi-layered, angular perspective, because all knowledge comes from singular axioms that will split into everything else. For example, what do all spiritual religions, science, esoteric teachings talk about? One axiom they all have in common: know thyself. If you do not know yourself, you'll not understand yourself. If you don't understand yourself, you might not understand why reality responds to you in the ways that it does. And if you don't understand that, you'll then believe your life is something that it's not. So you know, here's the problem with that. You have more faith in what is than in what could be. And that's the hardest part. I'll say that again. You have more faith in what is than what could be.
So thank you for tuning in. And if you enjoy the show, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and share with your friends and family to help us reach our fellow brothers and be part of the evolution as men. Back at it. Welcome to Manned Up Conversations. My name is Khawkhelo Habiani. And today, man, I got something special for us, man. I'm taking us on a journey today, you know. I got a man that I met, I think, let me get it right. I think it's 2 years now, if I'm not mistaken. At Black Labone. If you don't know what Black Labone is, probably one of the most creative, expressive. I don't even call it a concert, man. It's a movement. Yes. It's a place of gathering for creatives. It's a special place, man, for talented people. And of course, I got none other than Thando Motumi, but I think most people know him as the man Metamorphosis.
Yes. What it does. Absolutely glad to be here. It's going to be a truly amazing experience. Man. I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Yes, sir, man. And welcome, man. You know, like I say, I've got so many things to ask you already. Just coming off listening to your album throughout the weekend.
Nice. Thank you.
You sent me a couple of interviews that you did on YFM, and shout out to Shoutout for what he does, for having you on the show, man. I was like quite impressed. And you said a whole lot of things. I hope to capture some of those. Yeah. I hope to capture some of those in here.
There's so much more. But
just to give a bit more context, man, you're a teacher.
Yes.
You're a scientist.
Yes.
Like, let me say that again. This man is a scientist, man.
Theoretical physics is the game.
Come on, man. Yeah. This is the first black man that I meet who's kind of similar age, we can say, who's in that field. So, man, I know there's a lot that we're going to unpack in there. But you're also an author. And you're also a wordsmith, man. I'm not just going to say a poet. You're a wordsmith, bro.
Definitely.
So how do you blend all of these things into one career, so to speak?
Oh, I love that you said that. Because for me, it was personally like a bit of a magic trick.
Yeah.
The reason being, I had a dream in 2018 where I was on the highway driving, and then there were literally like a highway with like 4 off-ramps, where one said artist, second one said writer, third one said scientist, fourth one said educator. And I'm like, where do I go? And I couldn't even decide where to indicate. And then I just woke up. Yeah. And I was like, whoa. Yeah. And this is now when you're almost hitting 30 years old, 28, 29, 27, that age bracket vibe for anyone in their life. And I was thinking to myself, look, you're at the point where you've built enough competency in 4 of your favorite things. You need to pick one as like a main lane. What are you going to choose? And that's what the dream was trying to tell me. And I thought about it for a couple of weeks. And eventually I was like, you know what? I'm not sure if you're allowed to use a foul language or not.
Man, speak on it, man. Speak on it.
So I was literally like, you know what? Fuck it, I want it all.
Yeah.
And eventually I got it all. But I couldn't just say that to anyone, firstly. And the reason was, I thought it'd be delusional to tell people that I'm going to have 4 careers.
Whoa.
So, and I figured they'd discourage me and tell me not to do it. So I figured, number one, when you have a big dream that you know you can do, and I say you know you can do it because you do not trust in your own strength. You trust in the strength of divinity and ancestry, which is the first step. So when I had a dream like that, then I knew the message was trying to tell me that like, you're good enough for these 4 things, that's why you can pick a lane or switch a lane. And I decided I'm going to have all these lanes.
Man.
So when I made the decision fully, I was like, okay, cool.
Man.
You can't just say you want to do this now. Because for me, listing long list of things that I do is not good enough. I want to be a master at everything I do. So I pursue excellence in everything I try to do. So for me, the question then became, you can have maybe 4 careers, but can you be brilliant, excellent, award-winning, and highly achieved at 4 different careers? Cool. That became the question to myself. And I was like, okay, cool. Now, how on earth do you do that? Which is like a big thing. And I was like, okay, cool. So I started reading books on mastery. Shout out to Robert Greene. Self-mastery is quite a gem. 48 Laws of Power too as well. The Art of War, of course, Sun Tzu. And I just went on this journey of trying to understand what does mastery mean to me. Now, I believe human beings have different variables that they can actually measure. So you got to ask yourself an honest question and give yourself a mark out of 10 for the following. Physical health, mental health, spiritual health, pursuits and desires, wants and needs. Are you meeting the basic necessities for survival? And are you at the point where you can think of thriving? I say think of thriving because I believe you can only think of thriving when you've passed survival. Because survival is also a dangerous thing that plagues the mind. And it's tough for everyone. So I never ever sleep on the ability to change, because the reason why my name is Metamorphosis. Notice it's spelled differently for a very specific reason.
I'm glad you're going there, because I was about to take it there, but let's go.
I'm a quantum jumper and I jump into the future. And as I do so, I try to model that version of me. And that's another secret that I use. I quantum jumped and quantum leaped. So I thought to myself, okay, you have 4 careers. Fast forward 5 years in the future. Ironically, that's 2023. And I asked myself, what would that guy think of my current actions, decisions, and consequences when I do anything? And what if that guy was the best version of me? My higher self. And when I say higher self, I'm not talking about ego, because higher self was aligned to divinity, hence it's called higher self. It's self of awareness from a higher plane of being, meaning ancestral, historical knowledge of self and your own history, your totems. It's tarazelo, of course, obviously. We have to know these things.
Now you're bringing out some other words in there.
Yes,
man.
we got it. We got it.
Because you're talking lineage, divinity, ancestry.
Yes.
And
we must study these things.
And those are wonderful words, right? Those are wonderful things to even think of. I love that you're even saying that when you're in survival mode, you can't think out the box, so to speak, because all you can think about is what's my next meal? Where's that coming from, right?
It's not fair to expect people to jump that easily.
So we could argue that for our ancestors, there was never time for that, right?
Exactly.
But you mentioned also people like Sun Tzu, Robert Greene.
Yes.
And one of the things that I often allude to in the pod is, for us black men, for us black South Africans growing up now, when you think mastery, right, we gotta look to
the future.
To the future, of course, but we gotta look backwards too, right?
Of course, you have to study the past to understand the present.
But how come we mostly go for, and not to talk down on the Robert Greenes and Sun Tzus and most of these, but how come we can't find folks in our...
Oh, we got so much to talk about, because one thing I love about the curated library I created for myself, which kind of low-key started when I was like 14. I guess I had strange interests, and my old man gave me the Da Vinci Code. When I first read Dan Brown, I like slapped that in a week. And I was like, this thing is insane.
Yes,
and then I read Deception Point, then I read Digital Fortress, and then Angels and Demons as well. And this is not during exams. I'm supposed to be studying, but like I'm
very esoteric stuff.
I know, right? And I'm like flying through all these things. And I'm seeing it as normal, but not realizing that my mind was maybe a little bit different than most people's. I wasn't aware of that till matric, where I got sick. I had to be hospitalized, got out of hospital, and then it's like, finals are in a few weeks, and I'm like, you're in recovery now. And I just wrote the exams anyways. This is give even more deeper backstory to the reason behind my name. So it all happened, I think, in August during prelims. I think I only wrote 2 or 3 papers that year in matric. And funny enough, my year was actually Licensed to Kill, hence 007. So at the time, as we did in the future, I think the people from Nigeria have done amazing things. And I think the biggest thing is aligning to who you are and trusting in that. Because I believe we all have an inner being, inner soul, inner spirit, inner child. It's trying to tell us something. But everywhere around us, from the people we meet, the world, the media, entertainment, content, it's telling you to be something else. It's telling you don't have this. It's telling you, why aren't you like this? It's telling you, why don't you dress like this? But when you ask someone, what's the highest vibration? Now, naturally, we have to start with love. But love is not the highest vibration for the following reason. Because once you've attained love, love without awareness brings pain. Therefore, enlightenment is a higher awareness than love, and therefore a higher vibration.
So wait, are we seeking enlightenment before love?
Yes. Yes. And the reason is, without enlightenment, we don't have discernment. If you don't have discernment, you'll pick people that actually aren't really for you. Because I think of it this way, there's 2 types of people.
Come on, man.
Most definitely, fam. There's literally only 2 types of people. They're either engines or they're anchors. They either propel you forwards, or they help you sink, or stay in the same position.
Come on.
Engines or anchors. There's no in between. That one is clear cut. But the hardest thing is you'll never know that you'll have interacted enough with somebody to see their truth. And that's another hard thing.
And I mean, now you're talking alignment and things. So another teacher and we still haven't gotten back to your library, but we'll get back to that because we're still within books and stuff, right? Yeah. Another one of my teachers is Parker Palmer, and I've been speaking about him quite a lot.
More about that. Tell me more about that.
But anyway, Parker Palmer is more of a spiritual teacher, man. He runs he calls them circles of trust.
Nice.
Where you basically invited with no agenda, so to speak. We're there to invite your own inner genius into the space, right? And it's obviously guided by someone who's got knowledge of how to help you access that.
Yeah.
So it's not about correcting someone or telling them how to be, Tommy, G-Thoughts, you need to do this. With this part, you need to go this direction. It's more like, man, what are you trying to do with this thing? So it's more like inquiring into yourself, right? But you obviously have a guide to help you with that, in case the conversation goes a bit left. But he speaks about living out of alignment with yourself. And that's why we have a lot of these mental health issues, right? And a lot of issues in society. Definitely. Where we see men, for example, confused. Women, let's say everyone.
Everyone's confused, actually.
Everyone's confused, right? We'll use man, but let's use everyone. We use man here because we're speaking to men mostly on man-up conversations. And we see men in positions of authority, man, looking real good, earning good money. And we think he's got it together. And you said something that, you might have all of that money, but if you're not okay within yourself,
you'll never be happy. And that's the thing. It's people look at, it's hard to even speak about this because we always have to check our privilege, which is a difficult thing to do. You know what I mean? And because we've all started somewhere, everyone's experienced hardships to some degree in some capacity. So we can't ever neglect somebody else's pain. So at first wanted to mention that as a disclaimer as well, because this is a very sensitive topic for everyone, because capitalism put us in a position where your occupation and level of education as well will determine the level of tax bracket you're allowed to enter. Unless you pick a way out of that, which is entrepreneurship as well. Yes, remember, there's always more than one way. When one door closes, another one might open. If it doesn't open, find the window. If you can't find the window, there's always an emergency exit. Don't forget that. Yeah. So there's multiple layers to this thing. I think Sadhguru describes it as inner engineering, and I think that's the perfect way to describe it. Because when you do inner engineering, you're doing the mechanics of yourself, which is funny because that's why I made my song called, Mechanics of Emotion, Static Matter. And the meaning behind that is emotions become mechanical in the sense that they move and are geared towards experiences. But if you fall in love or experience any strong, powerful emotion, your matter becomes static because it makes you feel like you're frozen in time. There's that moment, that infatuation, there's only this for this moment, this present. Therefore, the present moment with that person in any encounter to whatever degree of emotional attachment will carry that level of weight in your own mind. But now the thing is, when we went back to the vibration about love and enlightenment, there's a higher vibration than both of those things, and that is authenticity. So to fully understand love and what love is, we need to be enlightened to the awareness of who we are. Because when you know who you are, you know who you should choose. Because when you choose better, you realize that you should actually become better. Because when you become your best self, you just attract better. It's like natural mathematics. Improve the curvature of the shape, the more spherical it can roll down a hill. If you're blocked up dimensionally, like a literal square, and decide, I won't change anything, I won't shave off the parts that aren't really necessary, you won't realize that a cube can also become a sphere. You just got to shave off the corners and do it at the right proportional rates. That's mastery. So the circle is revolution in a sense. And by revolution, I mean, you've got to go through different cycles, different segments, sections, and chords that actually all have different meaning. But the hardest thing is, don't forget the center. The center is alignment. The center is the root of where everything else comes from. And then trying to gear yourself towards that, you'll always find a place back home. Because the center is actually your compass. So when you ask for a guide in terms of like, what future or what thing can I use to guide me, you first got to realize it's not just up to you. You need more power than yourself. You're one person, one being, one soul, one mortal, and maybe even one or two ideas. But when you amplify and share that with anybody else, because there's always, no man is an island, we cannot survive alone.
Yes, sir.
You can get someone to join the movement. And when two or more come together, that is when my house is found. That is in the Bible even.
Yes,
and that's where we're talking about two believers united. That's powerful. And when 2 turns to 4 and 4 turns to 8, and we get to 4,096, 4,096 happens to be the number of people required to survive for 500 years in your lineage for you to exist right now.
Okay.
So there's you.
Whoa.
Yes. That's an actual mouthful.
I gotta slow you down.
Yeah, you got it.
Man, and I hope you listening to this, you might have to run this back, take some notes.
You will.
But yeah, we'll simplify it for you a little bit. So, and I heard you speak about this number. So 4,096. So let's break that down.
Yes, I'd love to break it down.
That's lineage. And how do we get to that number?
Oh, perfect. I can literally show you the mathematics.
Why that number in particular?
Oh, yes, you're asking the right questions, which I love the most because it gives you discernment. So let's go to the variables and where does 4,096 even come from? So first we start with, you need 2 to make 1. So 2 is the base pair, right? Okay. Now, you and your parents is 3 people. If I add your grandparents, we now need 7 people. And you see where this exponential growth then begins. Now, I shorten the age of people surviving because of less medicine, healthcare, access to food, security, safety, etc. And then eventually you get a number like that, roughly. So if you need 4,000 people to survive over a period of 4 or 5 centuries for you to exist right now, you're carrying in your DNA specifically their hopes, their dreams, their abilities, their skills, their trauma, because epigenetics is a thing. There was even a study where they took a specific type of worm, I forgot the name of the jack genome, and what they did was the following. It has a natural habitat. They took a couple of them out, put them in a hotter soil at high temperatures basically, and they made them survive in like harsher, hotter conditions. And 7 generations down, guess what happens? Those worms started to grow tails with like a bit of a change of color at the end.
Okay.
Then they took those new ones out, put them back in the natural habitat, and the lineage kept growing with like the tail that has changed.
Oh, wow.
And that just showed that like trauma and gifts are inherited continuously. But to change that DNA, it requires intentional action. Therefore, we're always going to carry the lineage, the trauma of our own lineage, but we're always able to change. Alcoholism can run in a family, but you can be the son that decides, you know what, I'm not going to do this. Then you teach your son that, then you've just fixed it.
You broke the chain.
You broke the chain. It's down to us. We always want to abdicate responsibility. Nah, it's the system, it's my parents' fault, it's other people's fault, but when are you going to take accountability for your own life? Because I think it's highly problematic that we're going to blame everybody else, including potentially even our partners as well, spouses, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever people choose. And then you're going to say, I didn't make it because of them. But I got to ask one question in response to that. Now, when you were given the vision you had for your life, was it given to you by the person that you choose to be your life partner? And the second question is, whose responsibility is it to manifest the life of your own purpose? Is that also your partner's responsibility? And when you don't cap with that answer, you realize that it's actually your fault. So the hardest thing about it is we have to address our own problems. We can't just ditch it or pretend they don't exist. That is why things keep repeating. You don't want to address the problem. When you address it, things can change.
But like, you know, and I love what you're saying, man. And, you know, I'm very much in the realm of dealing with pain and working with men's pains and all of that. And oftentimes when you talk about, yeah, man, this is probably stuff from your past that's like keeping you where you at. People are like, yeah, but I don't want to go there.
You have to go there. It's painful, but we have to.
Yeah. But like you say as well, we are in a better opportunity to reflect on those things.
We're so privileged.
Than our folks used to be.
Survival of an oppression.
Right?
We're lucky.
You know, they survived. I mean, dude, I don't even know how they survived.
I also don't know how they survived because when you hear about it,
I don't know how they survived.
And then you read archival documents which aren't available in bookstores at all. Because here's the thing. I used to think to myself in a postgraduate situation, thank God in ancestry I graduated twice last year, which was hard as hell. But we'll talk about that a bit later. And I think to myself, okay, what's so special about this? If you say forget about the status of the qualification, let's throw it out the window. And it's like, oh, there's something called a postgraduate library. So your student card only gets access when you're a postgraduate student, which means there's knowledge you can only access if you get to that level of education, which also means only certain people will be allowed to know certain things. And if they control access to those archives, how will you ever get a chance to access them unless someone chooses to share that with you? And when you look at the old apartheid history, it was incredibly dark. It was frightening. I think when you look at budget speeches where they'd spend about almost 13 times the budget on one Caucasian child compared to an African child, where it's like 13 Rand and like a state budget for like one Caucasian child and like 1 Rand 50 for a black child. That's like court document situations. And when you think about, okay, that's the budget, we think about Bantu education, where your syllabus is things like basic numeracy skills, how to count change, basic literacy skills, which is essentially you can read net blankes and things like that. Trigger warning, this is a very, very sensitive topic. So trigger warning to everybody listening to this. We're discussing a little bit of historical address. That is a very sensitive topic, and we of course try to attack this from a empathetic perspective, because it's triggering, it's traumatic, it's everybody's history, and nobody is not included in this conversation because we're all part of it directly and indirectly through the people that come from us and through us as well. So just wanted to first mention that before we discuss such a difficult topic. So with that, the history is even darker than we think.
Yeah.
There was a commission set up in the 1920s where the government sent out scientists to research in America, the UK, New Zealand, Australia, and basically to study racism and systems of racism and how to do that better. And that is why South Africa, I think, has the perfect system of racism because it's so thoroughly entrenched and systematic that you become blind to it because it's become like a consistent worldview that's normalized when it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And the conversation, of course, is hella sensitive. And we can't ignore privilege because it does play a role.
Yes, sir.
And privilege across not just race, but class as well. Because class and access to better schools and education does make a difference. One of my students asked a very, very important question. Shout out to my students. I've got to do that. The question was the following. Sir, is there really a difference between public and private school? My response to it was the following. If I remove every single teacher from this building right now, what's left? A building. It's not a school. Therefore, a school is only as good as the teachers that it has.
Yes, sir.
That's what determines a good school.
Sir.
It's just the teachers that are there. Now, has education become a corporate entity and structure? Yes. Globally, it's now a capitalistic system used to entrench status and also to entrench control of how far people can access certain things. And it's used as a metric, which is, of course, unfair. Now, we have practical knowledge. We also have pedagogical knowledge, which is how to teach. We have content knowledge, which is the content, textbooks, etc. And in my research paper, which was on the following topic, how do discourse patterns, that means patterns of speech, influence pedagogical strategies? Now, remember, pedagogy means the art, science, and practice of teaching. That is pedagogy. That's spelled P-E-D-A-G-O-G-Y. Everybody please look that up. Look for someone called Paulo Freire. He wrote a book called Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Powerful, powerful book. I recommend everybody read that. I read that as in my undergrad and it blew my mind about how one good teacher can influence a village in Brazil and teach the kids sympathetically a new curriculum and basically free their minds. That's the other thing. If you look at people like Gramsci, he mentions something called hegemony, which has to do with power. But when you break down deep what he's trying to say subliminally, because that's the thing, when you talk about some of these ideas, you can't say it straight. You got to like finesse it a bit. And he was talking about, with hegemony, he was talking about ideological domination by consent. I have to rewind and say that again because that's so dangerous. Ideological domination by consent. So IDC, ideological domination by consent. And that basically means an education system that teaches people to be submissive to the paradigms, principles, laws, content, and realities of that curriculum in a sense that they're unaware that they're being in the mental plane dominated, and then they become submissive to anything that comes outside of that realm.
Yes, sir.
So i.e. that'll basically mean the following. If I teach you black history in schools, this is currently happening right now, I like to somehow start at 1600. I begin by telling students, you guys were slaves and you experienced all sorts of things, and then we enlightened you and set you free with the Bible and et cetera, et cetera. But now what about pre-colonial history? You know, when I started looking for those books, I literally had to wait 9 months, 6 months for some books that are out of print that I personally paid for to be shipped, brought home. I have those books. People like Professor Van Sertima, who wrote the book They Came Before Columbus, which shows lots of evidence showing that one, the Columbus myth is quite a deep one. And two, the classic irony of how do you discover a place with already people there. 3, he learned the place by, was told about the place by black sailors actually, and actually lied to the Spanish and Portuguese governments about the size of that landmass. That's why Brazil is so big, because in the negotiations, he pretended it was like a tiny island when Brazil's freaking massive, and now we see how someone else got finessed. Brazil is almost the size of like 60% of the USA, something like that. Like, if you look like on a map wise.
When I listen to what you're saying now, it's almost like now we're going into the realm of like the map that we know.
Yes,
actually
which is
not,
fake.
Yeah.
Because the size of Africa is distorted. And there's a simple way to fix this looking at numbers. People, please go and Google the following: the square million kilometers of countries. Then look at the square million kilometers of continents. When you check those values, you'll see that Africa's number is a bit too large, but on the map, it looks kind of like smaller. And you realize that's because Western cartographers, which is the word for map makers, came with a racist colonial paradigm when they first made these maps. And because of the size of Africa, they had to then distort and minimize it geographically so that you'd subconsciously think you're smaller than you really are. So it's in the little things, your map even. If you look at the Piri-Reis map found in the 1500s, where the size of Antarctica is larger than normal, actually. And even the Amazon has like a strange history. I found this from a documentary by, what's the guy's name? Hancock. Yeah. Yes, he's one hell of a writer and a researcher. For a journalist to uncover that much, more than some archaeologists are willing to admit, I found that quite impressive. But he mentioned some strange things about the Amazon. There are certain types of plants that are found almost as if a gardener planted them in the parts of the region that's like almost like planted in rows, in a way. Old ancient plants. Now they found something called soot, where if you mix a few things with the earth, it takes infertile soil and makes it fertile.
Okay.
And that's now thousands of years old. And like, how the hell did they figure that out? They knew how to make soil that was completely infertile, fertile, by just combining specific things and then it'll make the soil fertile.
Yeah.
Then you look at giant stones that were found using technology called LiDAR, which is like an X-ray for the ground using a drone or a helicopter. And when they got the images, they found stone, perfect squares, triangles, circles, similar things like Stonehenge, similar things like Adam's calendar, that type of like knowledge. And of course, astrological phenomena mentioned through stones mirroring the stars. Now, why do all ancient civilizations keep pointing to the stars? From Egypt to Adam's calendar, that's in South Africa, by the way, Adam's calendar, people, Mpumalanga, a giant clock made of stone. And get this, there's 3 pillars. If you think of the symbol of pi, right? This is how beautiful it looks. Put 2 pillars parallel with like a smaller distance, stone pillars. Put another one on top like you're making a T, right? And then put another one in the middle to make like a small gap in the middle. Now, in one of those stones, it's perfectly positioned twice in both directions to the winter and summer solstice, where the sun sits perfectly in that space, in that small little circle, whenever those 2 things happen. So these people put heavy stones that weigh multiple tons in a circular pattern, made a clock that's a sundial where the shadows tell you what time it is, and that clock also tells you when is the winter and summer solstice, and the clock is also connected to star systems as well. And that's random, yet thousands of years old. So what I'm trying to tell you is they've been lying to you about ancient history. We're not primitive and foolish. There's a much, much deeper history there. I mean, also, why do so many ancient religions mention the flood? People, please Google the Younger Dryas impact, where meteorites hit, I think, the Grand Canyon area as well. You'll see erosion marks that look like a giant flood happened by the Grand Canyon. That's actually what that was. They found pieces of them in many places. Now let's think from a physics perspective, what happens when a meteor hits Earth? Let's say something the size of New York is flying from outer space, meteor-wise, and then hits the Earth. Now when it enters the Earth's atmosphere, the temperature is going to change because of that speed, and then it's going to get hotter and hotter and hotter, and this thing's like incredibly hot, moving at terminal velocity. The minute it impacts something, it's going to scatter into a whole lot of different pieces. But now, because it's so damn hot, it's going to keep releasing smoke. Now, there was so much smoke that there was no sun for 6 months, literally, during that time of that period. Now, if the sun keeps hitting sun rays in, they can't escape. So global temperatures get higher and higher and higher. Polar ice caps then begin to melt. And then in the end, you get a giant flood happening. And that's why all the ancient cultures mention a flood from an asteroid. And funny enough, Solon, who's that? Plato's great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, who visited an Egyptian high priest, who told them this happened 7,000 years ago, and it matches the geological data and archaeological data perfectly. And guess who studied in Egypt? Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Anaximander, Leucippus. Alexander the Great bent down on his knees, seeing an Egyptian high priest, telling them, I've never seen buildings this high, praying to a black gods. Mother Isis was actually the Virgin Mary, and she was black, and the Greeks prayed to that, and yet we're told God is not black.
Well, I mean,
the contradiction.
You know, you talk about Mother Isis, man. There's this Black Madonna.
Yes, that's the Black Madonna.
Hearing about
that is Mother Isis.
Is that it?
The Black Madonna, found in Egyptian history, which is actually Kemetian history. And here's another strange fact. Why is the only culture in the world has a whole field of study that's not controlled by its own people, that's in the African continent, and we call it Egyptology? Is there a Europeanology? Is there an Asianology? Is there a Chineseology? There isn't. Yet somehow, where there's a whole lot of wisdom by black people, we want a Western paradigm to control how that comes out. We want them to control and tell us who are the original people. Excuse me for that, but I just had to tell the truth. So, what's up with that?
I'm even going to get you on that. You know, you have to apologize for that kind of language, right?
Yes, of course. I definitely do.
You also mentioned some in one of the interviews I listened to, and we spoke about this with I think he's the editor of Mail and Guardian. We're
Yeah.
talking about the black man's identity crisis.
It's
right?
tough, eh?
And it's real, man.
It is.
And you know, I've got some mates who I've invited over here, right? We've obviously had conversations off the podcast, right? Stuff that I am interested in, they interested in. But like, I'm like, yo, man, that would make for such a dope conversation. Why don't we have it on the pod? Like, yo, I can't do that because of work, right? I might get fired for having these kind of thoughts. I might get fired for expressing myself in that way and owning my blackness and owning my experience as a man. I'm a black man who gets a job as, you know, very high position, right? But I have to kind of navigate that space in a very apologetic way, right? I can't be too black. I can't be too radical. Also, there's this fear of black men. You know, we spoke about Swargefar with Maloselanga, you know? And people don't like those kind of things because it kind of reminds us of the past. But those are
sensitive
parts
topics,
of our stories,
very, very sensitive topics, and you're so right.
Yeah.
It is a part of our story.
So when you hear, I mean, we can talk about it, but for most people, it's like,
it's fearful.
People. Yeah.
But
is it fear?
I think one, it's fear. I think it's mostly guilt as well. It is also pain. It is trauma. It is history. And that is why I mentioned even earlier that this is a very, very sensitive topic and, of course, trigger warning. And then to clarify my statement, I should have actually said it a bit better. The perception, skin tone-wise, becomes lighter and lighter as well, for one. But there has been times when a Caucasian actor has played the role of a pharaoh. And now, I don't have any problem with people playing roles and characters, but my issue is also the following as well. If any other culture, for example, who of course is part of the culture, because I think we all are part of our own culture, has someone from a different race then playing a major important historical figure in that culture, and chooses not to do enough background information or truly honor that culture, I think anybody would probably find that problematic. So I think that's the angle I'm trying to come from. Also, I'm all about inclusivity. I do believe we are all one. Of course we are. If we look at the Human Genome Project, they discovered that we're all 99.99% the same as humans. And by the way, race is only created by geological conditions that were created through weather patterns and where people choose to live. Because in the time of Pangaea, all the continents were one. This is why there's still a debate about where the origin of exactly where it was. But essentially, if you cut out the continents, you'll see that they fit almost like a puzzle perfectly. I invite that to be a fun home project for people to do. So once you connect them, and it does fit, it's like a funny puzzle. So when you put them all together, basically you can connect them Africa to South America, like it fits like that, and you connect Europe to that. What ends up happening is, if I'm more central, and you think of where the sun does, central equator, it's of course hotter there. Now, when it's hot, your hair needs to curl due to the heat. And, of course, your nose needs to widen to catch more air because of the humidity. Now, if you move further north, it gets colder and colder and colder. We also get less and less sunlight, which therefore then means you have less of a need to keep producing melanin genetically. And that happens more and more over time. Eventually, your complexion gets lighter and lighter. And then you can see theoretically where all races then come from. And that is why we'll all have, there's about 7 Adams and 7 Eves that were found across different continents, where everybody's genomes trace back to that. All of us. So essentially those 7, or rather I like to call them the first 7, they were probably the ones from Pangaea. They were probably the ones living in Pangaea. And then their lineages all moved to different continents. And the continents have different climate conditions. And over time, the human genome is designed to adapt to environments. That is why there's tribes who live literally fishing without any equipment, spear vibes, and they can hold their breath on average far longer than the average person. Where they go down underwater for like 5 minutes, try to catch a fish and swim back up. And that's the average person do for a minute. It's tough because I'm not trained to do that. Same thing with sprinters who are naturally good at sprinting. Same thing with coders, with anything. There's certain things we're naturally good at. And I think that's your body and mind trying to give you a hint that like, go here. Of course, there's things that you might be harder to do, but you can still build competence. It's still possible to get good at something you were not good at before. I'll give you an example of myself. When I was in high school, I had a little bit of social anxiety, was shy, maybe a little bit awkward, I was the quiet guy, but my mind was always racing. But now, where I'm at right now, I've now achieved so much, which I'm definitely grateful for. The divinity and blessing of receiving, but also accepting with gratitude the peace of that abundance and alignment, which I think is what it's about, aligning to self. And I didn't know at the time that the more negative things I wrote, the more negative things I kept manifesting. So I had to almost become my own policeman in my mind. And that is where Buddhism, Taoism, and Stoicism come in terms of teaching me life principles to self-manage and govern my own character better. So I wouldn't be too quick to claim that I do all those things, but I try to learn from all those things. And that I think is the most important thing. But I've realized, because because I've been spinning in so many beautiful circles, I forgot to fully answer why my name is what it is. So let me make sure I address that first, and then we'll continue from there. So metamorphosis means you're meeting a morphosis. So you just met a morphosis. That's how you catch the true spelling, by the way. Now, why are the underscores there? Now, in the beginning, I put underscores not because of social media and handles. The underscores were there before there were even handles, funny enough. Okay. It was there because I felt it was underrated at the time. So underscores because I'm underrated. That was there at the beginning. Yeah. But now that becomes cap because I've now won 10 awards I'm grateful for in my life. And now I can no longer say I'm underrated because establishment has now done that. So I might change it to dashes because I'm always in between different points in time. But that's still an ongoing conversation with myself. Hence the dash, life and death. Yeah.
Come on.
But when I'm saying also metamorph, now let's go back to the original word first and I'll tell you my meaning. Now, metamorphosis is basically a process of change, like when a caterpillar transforms into a butterfly. Now, let's explain that process scientifically. Let's go even deeper than that. Now, the caterpillar, when it becomes time for that moment, it essentially overeats, similar to Kendrick saying to pimp a butterfly. You are now eating too much. So it overeats intentionally to the point where it can't anymore. Enters a cocoon and then something strange happens. When it's in that cocoon and the beginning of the transformation is beginning to take place, it has dormant genes that begin to get activated. And in these dormant genes, there's information for a new antenna, a new metabolic rate, new wings, and it becomes a primordial soup when that gene gets activated where it basically eats itself, the carcass virus from the inside out. And then when it comes out of that, it becomes a butterfly. Now that is in the process of metamorphosis. So a caterpillar that looks like a remixed worm transforms into something far thinner that can also fly. And I kind of experienced that in my life as well, but it happened over and over again. So I had one metamorphosis, but these things kept happening. It's like something like a meeting amorphosis. And that's why I came up with the name metamorphosis. So morph implies a drastic change in phase, shape, or form. Osis implies a process. So metamorphosis means I'm meeting the flux of change continuously. And that's the meaning of my name.
Man, I love it, man. And writing is a very big part of you going through that process, right? So I often allude to this in many ways. I'm a writer myself, very much a closet writer, by the way. So
I started that way too. Definitely.
You know, I've done my thing on some raps. You know, I've been on some stages, but I lost a friend in 2013, and I just couldn't. I couldn't get back into it, right? But I found that writing allows me to explore my inner world, man, in ways that I can't do it through conversation or any other format. So just in your writing process, man, like do you go in there thinking about what am I trying to impact the person? Are you just, man, I'm hearing a beat, this is what I'm going with? Are you going with, I'm trying to educate? You know, what's your frame of mind when you go into space? Because your album it's layered, man.
Yes,
layered.
I coded that thing hectically on purpose.
Just like this conversation, I'm sure you're listening like, man, where are these guys going with this? But stay with us.
Please do.
You know?
We're dropping gems out here. Out here with the crown jewels.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. But damn, that's such a powerful question because there's so many answers because I write in so many different capacities. So let me first give the capacities and you'll choose which one you'd like me to address first.
Okay.
So I do have a research paper. By the grace of God, I got a B for it and managed back-to-back distinctions for physics and chemistry at honors level at WITS, as well as the overall course average of 70%. That was in my honors that I completed last year there. And then I mentioned earlier, graduating twice. The second one was a diploma in quantum computing and programming from Q World. And I believed a superhuman dream course average of 93%. Yeah, that was my course average. And by the way, the way I did it is even more impressive. I completed those two qualifications. Those started at different times as well. Started the honors part-time, took me about 3 years to finish. Then I started the diploma in quantum computing last year. Now, around about April or so, May, I got an email saying, you can do a diploma in quantum computing. I was like, whoa, I'd love to do something like this. The university's going to sponsor it. I'm like, even better. Now I'm like, my guy, you have so much work right now. You coach public speaking on Thursdays. You have extra class for maths on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. You teach in disadvantaged communities on Saturdays, 2-3 Saturdays a month as well. You have a full load teaching 188 students Monday to Friday. You're still headlining shows and you're still doing a postgrad degree at WITS and you still got a research paper. Now you want to add a diploma on top of that schedule. And I'm like, not a good idea. But I chose to do so and not tell anybody about it because I knew they'd convince me not to do it, which is true, they would have. Because even I'd try to convince myself not to do it. But I was like, opportunities like this don't come often. And I'm like, you know what? What did Nelson Mandela say? It always seems impossible until it is done. And I'm living proof that anything is possible because I spell impossible, like I tell my students, with a space and an apostrophe. So impossible for me means I'm possible. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
definitely.
I see you, man. So you're writing from a perspective of,
different levels. It's scholarship, it's poetry as well, it's academic essays, it's my own historical musings, it's dreams and manifestations, it's prayers as well. Then there's writing for music as well. Then there's facilitating workshops, curriculum planning and designing, running a special guest lecture at the School of Philosophy. That was like a dream to give my own special guest lecture, which I've now done. It was called The Symmetry Between Mathematics and Philosophy. I do have the entire lecture as well. It's not available anywhere yet. I just wanted to finish a little bit more editing and figure out how I want to release it because it's worth way more than people think. Sort of like a priceless discovery I made. Let me rather put it this way, a priceless rediscovery I made. It's like the better way of putting it. So I'll give you like a sneak peek of what I talked about. So I started by drawing two circles. One is mathematics, the other is philosophy. So my opening lines, I tell the crowd, I'm like, yeah, please do that right ahead. One mathematics, one philosophy. So I'm like to the crowd, I bet you guys think I'm about to draw a Venn diagram right now. And they're like, yeah, makes perfect sense. I'm like, you're wrong. I'm actually drawing a coin. So there's two sides of a coin. One side is mathematics, the other is philosophy. I'm talking about the edge in between for my lecture. So the connecting points are the following. I found that there are philosophies that can be described in the format of mathematical axioms. And I also found that there are equations that can be described using philosophy. Now, historically, most philosophers were also mathematicians, but with capitalism and education becoming more corporate, it was split into different subjects. So now we're taught things in separate ways, even in universities, faculty of humanities, faculty of sciences, then they split it again, the art, the maths department, physics department, chemistry department, and all these compartments are hiding things from you because you'll realize there's a higher blueprint to knowledge. I think one thing a good friend of mine, shout out to Siobhan, you are the MVP. I call her and Robin Ottens, Siobhan Ottens that is, shout out to her as well, the Schwarzschild radius for the following reason. She told me the following. She said, you know, I've come across a lot of people that are scholars and like pursuers of knowledge. And one thing I realized about you, being me, that's different is you've entered many different rooms of knowledge, which when the few men have met or people have met who can see the blueprint of the building. And I found what you said to be quite profound because pattern analysis is definitely my game and I see patterns in many different things. That is why I'm sort of talking about it from a multi-layered, angular perspective because all knowledge comes from singular axioms that will split into everything else. For example, what do all spiritual religions, science, esoteric teachings talk about? One axiom they all have in common. Know thyself. If you do not know yourself, you'll not understand yourself. If you don't understand yourself, you might not understand why reality responds to you in the ways that it does. And if you don't understand that, you'll then believe your life is something that it's not. So you know, here's the problem with that. You have more faith in what is than in what could be. And that's the hardest part. I'll say that again. You have more faith in what is than what could be. You have more faith in your current bank balance than what you could create. You can take that to any level. You have more faith in what you know right now than what you could know. More faith in what you've achieved than what you could achieve. So you want to hold on to that out of fear that we're going to lose it. Scarcity mindset. But as Abraham Hicks loves to mention, shout out to her as well, she says, trust in your own abundance.
Now, I listen to a lot of what you're saying, man, and to me, it makes sense, right? I've been in some worlds of my own. I've explored some dark paths as well. But, you know, usually when we have these kind of conversations, for people, it's like, what the hell are these people going on about, bro? You know? And largely, I think it's the way we are kind of taught how to think about things. The education that we receive that you spoke about is, you know, we're not taught to think outside, man, of whatever we're reading now, right? We're always talking about pulling from different sources. So to speak. You know, you can learn 8 things and find a connector somehow.
There is always connectors.
Right? And somehow they always link. But for the youth, you know, I spend Mondays with some youth in Hatfield. So they go to tax. we have conversations about everything.
Nice.
I'm not very
I wouldn't mind
agenda-driven.
helping with workshop, life coaching workshop, motivational talk, situation vibes.
That's where we're going.
Sounds
with
like
it,
a great initiative.
That's where we're going with it.
Definitely.
You know?
Yeah.
And a lot of what I hear from them is, man, these boys think a lot, man. They know a lot.
They do.
They hear a lot, but they're also overwhelmed with everything. It's like, Jesus, too much.
We're in the information age, and sadly, the paradox of choice, information-wise, has created more ignorance than it's supposed to provide an intellect.
Ooh.
Which is also like a bit of a warped statement. That's a bit of a wild one. I'm just in the frank mood, I guess. But nonetheless, what I mean by that is, we now have access to so much information that you almost don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
But now the key thing is you got to practice critical thinking, reasoning, and writing. That's a powerful mind right there. Because discernment is needed when you're going through information. Otherwise, you'll just spur out any theory that anybody says. You know what I mean? You can just say the world is flat. Now, if I take a camera with my phone and I take a photo of the road, it looks flat, right? Yeah. And if I take photos from a bit of a further distance, still looks flat. But if I take a telescope, it's not flat. so you see, so your senses can fool you. That's the moral of the story I'm trying to say today. Shout out to flat earthers there. I'm not trying to disrespect y'all, but yeah, I'll just leave it there. So what I'm trying to say is, for us to truly discern the knowledge, information that we receive, we've got to be very careful with, one, the sources where it comes from. We've got to also form our own opinion. We can't just regurgitate things because some researcher says it, or person says it, or a public thinker or thought specialist says it. So essentially, who has the true answers? Inner you. Now, why do I say inner you? Because inner you and inner being is actually divinity. Now, why do I say that's divinity? Because once you remove the distractions, the desires, the impulses, the emotional lack of regulation, the lack of character development, when you work on flip those things, you'll find the answers within. And you're like, whoa. But now they keep saying know thyself, which is still there. Now I have to also answer your question because, as I said, my mind also diverges in many different directions. So I need to make sure I answer your writing question. So process-wise, it depends what I'm trying to do. Let's go with the lesson plan, for example. Let me start there. Now, what is my favorite teaching pedagogical approach, which I try to always use? I do the following. Let's say I'm teaching tariff systems as an example. Before I go anywhere with method and blah, 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 I start with the title and what it means. So I ask the students, what does tariff mean? Somebody tell them, what's a tariff? And they'll spoon off some answers, payment, charges, cell phones, water, electricity. Then I'll give them the definition. It's a charge rate for a service. Now, a keyword there was rate. A charge rate for a service. Now I go, Walmart services. Now what's a rate? Now the textbook definition would be the following. It's a comparison between two or more things of a different kind. Now what's a ratio? A comparison between two or more things of the same kind. So if I'm saying ratio of boys to girls in a classroom, it's a ratio because I'm comparing the same type of thing, learners. But if I say rate, two things must be different. Currency and the unit of what I'm using. And that's just the intro of how I start to teach it. Nice. So I want you to understand why you're talking about this thing before I even talk about method and principles. Yes, you first got to know what's the heading about. Let's first start there. I think that's important. Because the best way to teach, I feel, is firstly, all knowledge begins simple, then becomes complex. Then at a higher state of awareness, becomes simple again. Complex, it's a fractal actually. Everything is simple, complex, depending on where you look at and how far you're willing to go. Yeah. Even something as simple as time. Now time is a mystery, it's not even simple. But if I think of a physical clock, that's one definition of time. Then you have thermodynamics, which is the entropy or information in the system. So entropy is log W, which is the work energy function of the environment. From thermodynamics, that chapter. Now that's a measure of chaos theory, which is order and disorder. Now, the measurement of order and disorder, let me give you an easier example. So let's say you have a child and you decide not to have anybody help them clean their room, and you tell them, you don't have to clean the room. So in the beginning, the room was ordered, then over time, give it 3 weeks, it's now highly chaotic. So that's entropy. So order tends to approach disorder. Yeah, that's entropy as well. Yeah. So that's another definition of time. But then the third one is also a wild one, psychological time. Time flies when you're having fun. If you're in pain, a second is too long. Therefore, your perception of time also influences how you feel the rate of time flows. Now, that's a powerful insight. Because it means effectively that if you don't like what you're doing, it'll always feel like it takes you longer, naturally. But now here's the thing. If you're feeling down, where can you catch more energy randomly, even when you haven't eaten anything? Do something you're interested in. Now, why do I say that? The word interest has rest in it. which means something you're interested in has a rest energy value, which will intrinsically drive you to complete it, even though you have little energy. And that's how you can like recharge your mind as well.
That is crazy. I'm thinking about that. Like, man, I'll be working on something like I'm so relaxed. But I'm like killing this thing. Man.
Yeah, because you're interested.
I don't even. Oh,
you don't even need energy.
It's
and
1
you're done.
in the morning and I'm done.
You're in a flow state actually. Stephen Kotler, brilliant writer and scientist. He wrote the book Finding Superman, where he studied many CEOs and extraordinary people throughout life and try to find patterns. And one of the things he found, which is called the flow. Okay, there's debate about who came up with the term flow state. Let me first go there before I like ignore other people that were involved in the research. But essentially, flow state in neuroscience is that thing where we just mentioned now. Time seems to fly when we're having fun. If we do things we're interested in and we're not focused on the task at hand. Here's another interesting discovery. The time taken to complete a task will expand as far as you allow it. So if I say it takes me a week to set a test, it'll literally take me a week, no matter what I try, because I've set the mental frame that it takes a week. But now if I say it takes 5 days, and then 5 days when you build competence and efficiency turns to 3, 3 turns to 2, 2 turns to 1, and now I myself can set a test from start to finish or assignment in an hour or less, including memo, everything typed. But it's only because I built the competence and efficiency over time. And the way to do that is you need to have a strategy for it. So let's flip it back to writing again. Now people say they have writer's block, which is actually a myth, by the way. And then I found out it's a myth. I was kind of shocked. Like, what? Everyone talks about this. It's a myth. Number one, what you talk about, you keep manifesting. So if I say my writing is blocked, I'm blocking it by calling it blocked. They're like, whoa, first major insight. And the second one, why it's a myth, is the following. Shout out to Dr. Sarah Godsell, because she taught me this exercise, free writing exercise. So you take a timer, set it on 5 minutes, and hit a clock there. Now you will write down anything that comes in your head. You're not allowed to edit. You're not allowed to think about the previous line. You just write whatever's in your head. Anything and everything. For 5 minutes only. When the alarm rings, stop. After that, select your favorite lines. Write only those ones on the side. Right? After that, edit. There's always a gem hiding there. Promise you. Anybody who does this exercise will always find something good. Even if it's one line, there'll always be something. I promise you. If you just free write and then pick out the best parts, edit to that, you'll find a piece. Just like that.
And that can build on to whatever else you want to add.
And now to also explain why you have writer's block. Because the following. In your mind, you want to make every single line perfect. Therefore, when you write the line, you're like, I could write this line better. But you're also thinking how to make the next line more perfect. And that anxiety blocks you from writing. That's actually what it is. But if you accept, this is why free writing is important, you're removing the shackles of judgment. So you're detaching from the outcome of a perfect line. You will then create freely. And then when you edit and remove the best lines, you're creating structure. So you first need freedom of creativity and then structure and execution. And that's where the editing part then comes in.
Come on.
That's how you kill writer's block.
Come on, man.
Murder to excellence like Gay and Hope.
You guys are in class right now, man. I feel like we need to pay this man for this.
Dropping gems for days, doing it freely because, of course, he mentioned the podcast is called The Manned Up. So I'm manning up and giving you the gems I've used to reach my level of success. Because here's the thing. If I tell myself it'll take me 10 years to achieve something, it might take me 10 or more. But what if I say, kill that 10-year dream in 5 years? You'll be further along than if you try to do it in 10 years. And what if I say, do that 5-year dream in 1 year? Guess what? You might burn out in 9 months. It'll be further along than you would be in 5 years' time if you kept the original schedule. And that's how wild time is. Because you decided this thing will take me 5 years. It will definitely take you 5 years. If you say 1 year, anything's possible. Let me give another crazy example. Jemiah Bless can shout out to him because I recorded a dope-ass track with him called Summer on Smash, SOS. By the way, people, new music is coming. I'm cooking Too Nice and Too Hot. I have 16 new tracks on the mixtape. I have 7 tracks on the album, all I've banned. Mixtape is straight rap, instrumentals, classic boom bap, hip hop, jazz and soul instrumentals. Of course, classic bass lines as well. And then the album is all live band. And then I did a miracle thing a few weeks ago at Batagiba, Africa, and did a Corridors of Mirrors showcase, which is the name of my band. So Metamorphosis and the Corridors of Mirrors is the name of my personal band. I've selected members I've met along my path. And with that, I did a one-of-a-kind experience where I basically made I don't even know if I should even say this part. This is like a bit of a thing that's still to come. Okay, I'm going to put a pin in a part of it, but I will say is it's world record worthy. I'll definitely tell you guys more about it later, but I don't want to say too much before I'm done with it. So I'll just be quiet for now. But that's what I'm trying to say. I made new music there, and 9 tracks were created, all with a live band as well. So now I have 7 tracks that are 40 minutes, all live band is one project. We got it 2 years ago. a few weeks ago made 9 new songs, so I also have 16 new live band songs as well.
Whoa.
And I'm not done recording the mixtape. When I get to about 23 songs, then I'm still deciding how I want to release it. I might just drop 14 tracks and do a deluxe edition later, but add another 9, or I might just split it into 2 more products or 3 EPs. I'll see how I feel. But one thing I'm saying is I'm cooking too hot, and I definitely will give the host here some sneak peeks of stuff. He might have seen a YFM freestyle that's unreleased, and I gave him that for sure because I'm on this podcast and he deserves a bonus feature that nobody has yet.
Man.
So he's going to share that soon. The second I post, he's more than welcome to share it as well.
Right.
So he's getting that exclusive release situation as well.
Man, and that's a fire. We're gonna attach the part. Should you attach the interview to this? Because then that snippet was also on.
Oh, the YFM interview. Yeah, please do. Yes, please do.
Okay.
You're more than welcome to. That's out. That's freely available. Yeah.
Okay, so we will attach that, man. But Metamorphosis, I know we can go on for centuries, bro. So I gotta get you back.
Yes.
We just came up with a collab. So for Students and Tux, I'm gonna get you there. Let's do some.
I'm keen.
But I know when we spoke last week, when I met you at Black Labone, you said you got something interesting on the horizon, man.
Yes.
So before we close, what's happening for. I mean, you just kind of gave us your lay down with the music.
Yes.
But you're a multi-layered man, so you got career things also
Almost
happening. So
definitely.
what's going on that front?
All right, what's going on? All right, I've made 3 5-year plans. So I made that process in 2018. Where I'll tell you guys a bit about phase 1. What were the targets I set then? And I'm so grateful to God, divinity, ancestry, everybody I met along the path, everybody who took a chance on me. Everybody who gave me mercy, grace, and more second chances than I thought I maybe even deserved. But I'm where I am because of those who helped me. So Ubuntu is a very important thing, and we can never forget those who helped us on the path to success as well. I think that's important to give back in that regard.
Sure.
But nonetheless, what's on the horizon, I now have 3 science qualifications, and best believe masters is up next. So I'm currently shopping around for where's the best place to do a master's in theoretical physics. I'll either do theoretical physics straight, either go into further quantum computing, or go into cosmology or quantum mechanics. So those are the things that I'm looking at for my master's degree. I already got tons of lectures. Here's a sneak peek of how I got an A for not only, forgot to mention, I broke a record at WITS as well.
Okay.
So I am the first person in the history of WITS to successfully complete first and second year simultaneously while doing 4th year physics and chemistry. A total comprising of 13 modules. And by the end of that year, this was not done in 2011, by the grace of God, I had one of my most uplifting moments, an affirming moment, a moment that came after many, many years of failure, where a doctor said the following to me. 1, your registration's wrong. I'd added more courses than I'm allowed to. My bad about that. But 2, wow, you actually did well. You got an A for 4th year physics. And the third thing she said truly blew my mind, and I thank God that I got to experience this moment, because this is the first time in my life I can say I experienced a thing where anything is possible. She said the following. Based on these results, I have no choice but to promote you straight to 3rd year. So the record I set is the following. I successfully completed 1st and 2nd year of my first degree in 1 year, and did 4th year physics and chemistry in the same year as that. And got an A for 4th year physics as a 2nd year, and tutored quantum mechanics as well as a 2nd year to some of my fellow students, because I got an A for quantum mechanics as well when I was a 2nd year. At 4th year level as a 2nd year. So that's a sentence that's not allowed to exist in most universities. They'll never allow you to do more than 1 year. It sounds delusional and crazy. But I'm glad I took a risk. Looking back, I'm even shocked at myself, that like the confidence to risk it all like that. Oh, it was crazy. I had a double clash as well. Class 8 to 5 or 6 every day. Only break was 1 to 2. Tuesday and Thursday, I had 2 lectures at the same time, different lectures. And I was honest from day one. Look, Prof, I have a clash. You can see my timetables right here. It's literally impossible for me to attend all of your lectures. But what I will do is with the following, with your permission, please, Prof. I will have to alternate because there's nothing else I can do right now. I'll make sure at the end of whatever lecture I attend, I check what work did I miss, what do I have to read, and I'll try my best to make sure I submit all my assessments on time. And they said, look, don't let me be annoyed by this type of stuff, but it's all right. I'll give you that chance. And they did. Thank you for that grace. You see, that's what I mean. The fact that it was real and upfront, rather than 3 months in, this guy's always giving my lectures. Now when I tell him that story, now he thinks you're lying now. You see what I mean? But because I was transparent at the beginning, it gave me that grace. So being real always ends up saving you. But beyond that, academic-wise, writing-wise, I'm working on another book. Fourth book, poetry anthology, coming soon. My own book as well, coming soon. And I'm also working on a lyric book because I intentionally did not release the lyrics to my first album. But in the lyric book, I will give out a bit of another sneak peek. Y'all are getting gems because my boy right here is just enemy me so damn well. And give me extra stuff. And give me things I'm not even supposed to say, but I'll say them anyways.
Yes,
so my next book will, of course, be a lyric book as well, which will be up for sale soon. It will be to celebrate the anniversary of my album, which will be turning 4 years old. Unbelievable. This year. So my album graduated. I graduated twice last year. I have a graduation ceremony at the end of this year. I think it's the perfect gift to myself and to my fans and those who will encounter my work. And I'm blessed to say as well that speaking to the head of research and science at WITS as well, he CC the librarian, and by the grace of God, ancestry and the blessings of life, my first album, Wormhole of Consciousness, will be placed in the WITS Library of Education and other libraries too. So I'm grateful for the increase in my academic and artistic status. And again, I'm living proof that anything is possible. If you dream it and believe it, you definitely can achieve it. But the key thing is figure out a plan and a strategy. And this is also the winning recipe. Not just the Kendrick Lamar recipe, a deeper recipe than that. Can't let them sleep on the bars. Here's the following. Ideate. That means free radical mind exploring ideas. Once you've ideated, add to the vision. Actually write this down. There's a flow diagram. So first step is ideate. Second step is improve that vision. Third step is draft plan. Fourth step is try and action. Fifth step is revise plan. Sixth step is strategize holistically your plan. And then seventh step is work on each step and refine it one day at a time, one step at a time, because a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So the hardest part is starting, and the rest will fix itself. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so blessed to be here, so blessed to live the life that I live. And thank you to everybody. Thank you to Man Up Conversations. Thank you to family. There's too many people to mention, so I'll just say thank you to everybody in every energy frequency. And I'll close this off with a beautiful prayer that I often say to myself in the morning.
What's up?
We pray to God in the heavens above, across our bloodlines and all throughout time. We ask for your strength, guidance, wisdom, and protection, that everything in our path we clear and transmute through space, time, reality, and dimension. We give thanks for grace. We give thanks for mercy. We give thanks for being who we are, for ancestry through divinity, for being mortal instruments that speak to the divine. For we are light and our shadows are integrated. We do not fear anything because God's grace is always with us. We give thanks for the blessings, peace, abundance, alignment, mercy, grace, forgiveness, second chances, second breath, second blessing to existence, and the people we choose to interact with. May what we seek truly find us. May those with ill intent be repelled from our lives, and may no weapon formed against us ever prosper, for they are merely devoid of meaning, definition, functional purpose. For we are truly one with the light and the divine, and we give thanks in the name of God, the universe, the cosmic source, cosmic consciousness, and all that exists in between is positive manifestation of thought through will, action, truth, and desired consequences summated as destiny. Amen.
Amen. Man, I ain't got nothing more to say after that. It's been blessed. Peace and love. Check out Man Up Conversations. Make sure you follow us, man, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You're on YouTube. So, man, make sure you start running those numbers up, because I think we left Earth with this one here, man.
Oh, most definitely.
We left Earth with this one here.
By the way, everybody, I am everywhere and anywhere by exactly the same name. Met_A_Morphosis on Apple Music, Spotify, etc. Google Linktree/Metamorphosis. You'll also find all my content there. That's my website, by the way. And yeah, documentaries available on the link too. And thank you so much.
Man, we're going to put all of those in the show notes. It's been blessed, man. We out of here. Peace.
Peace.